All right, everyone. Welcome to Startup Grind Chicago. What a big night we have here tonight. And before we get started, we were so excited to have a live event. And of course, as pandemic would have it, we had to go back to virtual. But I am so happy for tonight and the amazing guest that we have joining us. But before we get started, just one thing I have to share, and I don't mean to get a little bit personal here, but just so everyone knows, my name is Tom Dennison, and I am the original founder of Startup Grind Chicago, and I ran it by myself for about 5 years. And then at some point in time, I was very fortunate to meet Aaron Levy, who very quickly became a co-director for Startup Grind here in Chicago. And then not long after Aaron, there's Aaron. And not long after Aaron, I met the amazing, the illustrious, the incomparable Madeline, AKA Mads Ulivari, who's also here with us tonight. And just about 2.5 years ago, I think I met Raj, aka Startup Hype Man, Raj Nation, who I believe his wife is conducting some yoga right now. So he's on mute and he'll be joining us here in a second. But I just wanted to say thanks to all three of you. Thank you very much. Without you three, none of this would be possible. Thanks for making all this happen. All right, I am going to share my screen again very quickly, just so everyone gets an idea of the backstory of Startup Grind. By the way, everyone in the chat, let us know if this is your first time joining us here for Startup Grind Chicago. And if you've been to Startup Grind Chicago in the past, let us know. Guess, how many times have you been here before? Love to hear it. Anyway, so Startup Grind actually was founded about 12 years ago in Palo Alto. And here in Chicago, believe it or not, we are now in our 10th year. It was, I think, October 2011 that we had our very first Startup Grind Chicago event. And this is, if you can believe it, this is our 103rd event for Startup Grind Chicago. Since we founded Startup Grind Chicago, we are now in over 600 cities around the world. And coming up in April, we will have our 10th, that's right, our 10th global conference. And a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, we had 10,000 attendees in Redwood City. We had some, 300 startups that were exhibiting. We had a couple of hundred amazing, incredible guest speakers like we've got here tonight. So if you are interested in joining us at our global conference in Redwood City, please reach out to any one of us here tonight, myself or Aaron or Madeline or Raj, who will join us here shortly. We would love to see you there. So just our beliefs, give first, make friends, help others. This is not about exchanging business cards. This is really about making friends. And really, in all of this, why are we here? Why are we doing this? Why is it that we do this each and every month? And this is our 103rd event. and once again have an amazing guest speaker here tonight? Well, it's really about three things. It's about inspiration, education, and connection. And certainly the amazing guest speaker that we have here tonight will inspire and educate all of us. But it's that third piece, connection, that is really up to you all. Now, of course, certainly this would be a heck of a lot easier when we were in person, but tonight, of course, we will take advantage of technology, and we're going to put everybody into breakout rooms. And when we do this, I want to challenge everybody here tonight. When you get into your breakout room, I want you to immediately let everybody know your name, let everybody know what you are working on, and try to make a real connection with somebody in your breakout room. And by that, I mean, try to meet up outside of these 4 virtual walls. And if you do that with just one person that you meet here tonight, I promise you that only great things will follow. So, Aaron, Mads, are we ready? Everybody, hang on to your shorts. Let's go to a breakout room. All right, all right. I know people are making their way back into the big room. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. Mads, just let me know when everybody has made it back. Once again, if this is your first time at Startup Grind Chicago, just put that in the chat and let us know where you are. Not like literally in your house, but I mean like, what city you're in or town or island you're on. Ithaca, New York. Wow. Pilsen, awesome. Love Pilsen. All right, all right. So we have a tradition here at Startup Grind. And so when I announce, well, first of all, let's let everybody turn off or unmute yourselves, if you could, very quickly, very quickly. And when I announce our wonderful guest speaker here tonight, I need everybody, and I mean everybody, hear, scream, shout as loud as you possibly can, as if, I don't know, the Bulls won the championship, the Bears won the Super Bowl. I don't think either of those are going to happen, but anyway.
I don't know. The Bulls are looking pretty good. I don't know.
They are. They might have a chance. All right, let's do this. All right, let's give it up for Tessa Flippin. Now mute. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. That was absolutely terrific. Tessa, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm super excited. So I know I asked you this earlier, and this is how I like to traditionally start out, but certainly we'll get to where you are today, and very, very excited to talk about that. But let's go way back. Let's rewind the tape a bit. Let's go way back. So tell us, where are you from? Where did you grow up? What kinds of things were you thinking and doing? And was there ever, a spark of entrepreneurship along the way?
Yeah, so I am originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I was born and raised in the Midwest and grew up in the Midwest. And as a kid, the things that I really liked to do was like be outside. I spent a lot of time outside, whether it was like camping or just kind of biking around the neighborhood and hanging out with my friends or playing sports. I started playing soccer at like age 5, and I was always like on the park board team. And then I started playing basketball, and then I started running track. So there was like always some sports season, if not 2 sports seasons going on simultaneously. And so a lot of my like elementary school and high school was spent like playing sports and at sports camps. And then constantly driving across the state of Minnesota and even throughout the Midwest to play in tournaments on the weekends and things like that. So, and I also love to camp too. As growing up, I was like always going on camping trips, like with my family and with my friends. And so, just being outside, I think was always something that I enjoyed. And let's see, so any sparks of entrepreneurship? I do remember having a car wash with my friends as a kid, where we like made the signs and we had the cash register and we were having, running around the neighborhood, trying to show everybody the signs and getting them to come to like the front of our house where we would wash their car and like vacuum the inside. And then I remember, the customers paying us and us being like, they would give us like a 20 and we were charging $5 and we'd be like, do you want change? And they'd be like, yes, I want change. Like, I'm not going to give you a $15 tip. So
I love that you asked that though. It's like, that's cool.
I know. That was probably the first kind of business that I ever tried to launch.
So I have a question for you. And one thing I appreciate this is that your humility in describing sort of your athletic abilities, which we'll get to here shortly. But I found this, and I mentioned early on that, we've had over 100 guest speakers at Startup Grind, and we've had, elite musicians. We've had elite athletes, even professional athletes in the past, and any number of guests who, when they were a kid, like would teach themselves how to code and things like that. And I'm just wondering, it seems to me there's kind of a common thread through all of that. And you probably know this from your experience as a VC today, which we'll get to, but there are also common threads of success and failure in startups. And I think it's focus. It's like if you have focus, certainly that's an advantage. If you lack focus, you're probably destined for failure. And I think about that with, athletes and musicians. Do you think that kind of, level of focus on your sport, and maybe you can share with everyone what that is or was, but I'm curious what your thoughts are and how that might contribute to entrepreneurial success.
Yeah, I mean, I think being dedicated to something for so long is something that you get from athletics. And so I played soccer, basketball, and track in high school, and then I went on to run track at Stanford as a high jumper. And so I was, very dedicated to that, like all through high school. And there were often times where like I couldn't do things that all the other kids were doing, whether it was in high school, because I had these like tournaments on the weekends that I couldn't miss, or in college, like not being able to go to the parties on Friday night because I had, sprints at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. And so I think there is like a huge level of discipline that you get from athletics and from dedicating yourself to things like that in your, previously in your life, as you look to then be an entrepreneur. And you kind of have, specifically, I think for like team sports, but also for individual sports, like there's a huge aspect of being like a team player when you're developing a small company or a small business or a startup. And I think that like those aspects that you get from playing team sports really do kind of carry over to how you lead a team, or how you interact with people that you work with, or like whether you're humble about things like that, or whether you're kind of like a dictator at the end of the day and just kind of telling people what to do. It's like, you need to know how to work with people. And I think you get a lot of that from athletics as well. But then I think like in high jumping, it's a very technical sport. And so you really have to like craft your mind, but also like craft how your body is moving, and like think about all these things at the same time. And so I think when you're, potentially building like a technology company, like you're thinking about how all of these things are working together, and really giving that like discipline on a daily basis that you need to in order to be successful as a founder. And then lastly, I think there's like an aspect of entrepreneurship that's about learning and constantly being able to like learn new things, and also be coached by other people in the industry, and how you kind of take that feedback and grow. And so that's another thing I think that I learned being an athlete was, people are going to give you feedback, and they're going to give you criticism, and they're going to like tell you what to do, and they're going to tell you what you're doing is not right. And so you have to be able to take that with, grace and bring that forward in a way that is beneficial to your company.
So I remember something that is fascinating, by the way, and that's kind of what I was thinking, is that there had to be some sort of relationship between that kind of dedication and focus and entrepreneurial success. I remember something you shared with me when we first met, that you actually had offers to go elsewhere, scholarships to go elsewhere, but you ended up at Stanford. So tell us how you arrived at that, sort of why you arrived at that decision.
I'm so shocked because I don't actually remember this conversation that we had, because I don't usually like share that with people. But yeah, I did. I was recruiting in high school to get a scholarship to run track. And I was going on visits during my junior year to different universities all over the country, visiting their athletic departments and talking with their coaches, and ultimately trying to get, a full ride or a partial ride to the university. And I, for some reason, didn't include Stanford in that outreach process. So I was like at UNC, I was at Syracuse, I was at University of Michigan, I was at University of Minnesota. I don't even remember all the colleges that I visited. And there was a point where I ended up kind of narrowing it down to two schools. It was University of North Carolina, and Syracuse, I think, was my second choice. And I was like in love with University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And I was like, I went on my visit. I had a great time. They took me out. I was like, this is the first time I've ever been in like a club situation coming from like Minneapolis. And so I was like, this is amazing. I want to come here. And then like I had applied to Stanford just like as a typical student would. And so I was like about to sign on the dotted line to go to the East Coast. And then I get home from that visit and my mom's like, you have a big package in the mail. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, it says like, congratulations on the outside of it. I was like, wait, really? And so I was like in the car driving somewhere and I was like, just open it and tell me what it is. And she was like, you just got into Stanford. And I was like, what? And so at that point, like I was actually still really in love with going to UNC at the time. And my dad had to kind of talk me out of it. And he was like, Stanford's a great school. Let's just go out and visit the campus. And if you don't like it, don't go there. We can always like go back to your plan. And so I went there on my visit, talked to I went there on my visit. I liked it. And I was like, it's an option, but I really wanted to run track. And so while I was on the visit, I told my dad, I was like, let's just go talk to the track department, the head coach. And so we just kind of walked into his office and I was like, hey, I'm Tessa. Like I won state in high jumping in Minnesota, would love to potentially have an opportunity to run at Stanford if I come here. And he was like, okay, like a couple weeks later, he calls me back and he's like, yeah, you can walk on if you want. And I was like, okay. And so that's kind of how I ended up at Stanford.
That is very, very cool. I remember that vividly, our conversation. But so in that sort of environment, and you got there and you were a walk-on, tell us about that experience. Because did you have to like prove yourself to the rest of the team or, not being that elite of an athlete? Mm-hmm. Tell us about that experience.
To be honest, I don't really remember that much about it, but I do remember that I didn't have to like prove myself. There were a few high jumpers on the team already, and they kind of just like took me under their wing and kind of helped me learn the ropes. And I do remember that like some of the athletes who were on scholarship were like, oh, we're going to, the food hall where everything that we eat is free. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go to the dining hall with everybody else because I'm not on scholarship. And so I did feel like a little like second class to the other like, better athletes on the team. But ultimately it was fun. It was a great time. I enjoyed my time on the team, even though it was really taxing. Like I mentioned, I couldn't go to all the parties that I wanted to go to and kind of have that typical college experience.
So what did you study at Stanford?
So I started out studying engineering, and then I kind of transitioned my major during, like sophomore year to what was called science, technology, and society. So kind of like the interaction of like technology and society and how that all works together. But it was very much so like a kind of create your own major kind of situation. And so I was able to take a lot of math classes that I had already taken as on the engineering track and kind of apply them to this new major, and then take a lot more like social sciences in addition to those highly technical classes.
Were you and the balance being an athlete and going to a great university, one of the best in the US, um, when were you starting to think about like, what am I doing after? What is this? What am I working towards?
I think I started thinking about that during my junior year, because I always participated in some of the more like diversity focused organizations. There's like Inroads where they help you get an internship between the different like years of college during the summer. And so I had always done that. I always came home to an internship with some organization back in Minneapolis. And then I also participated in MLT during my junior year, which kind of like helps you figure out how to write a resume and kind of how to start thinking about some of that stuff. And so, and they have conferences, I think twice a year throughout the year where you get put with all the other MLT cohorts across the country. And so I think through that, like they really got me thinking about like, what is my career going to be and what do I really want to do? And at that point in time, I thought I wanted to go and work in sports because that's really all I knew. And I was like, oh, I'm an athlete. Like I'm super passionate about sports. I think I want to work in sports. And so that's kind of the path that I took.
And so then out of Stanford, where did that lead you?
So out of Stanford, I graduated in 2009 when literally nobody could get a job because we were like in the middle of a recession. So my options were move to Chicago because my sister lived here at the time, or move home and live with my parents. And I was like, I'm not moving home. So I'm going to just go live with my sister and figure it out. So I moved to Chicago. I actually took a retail job because I could not get a job anywhere else. So I worked at Abercrombie and Fitch in Water Tower for the first 3 months after I graduated from Stanford. And then I left that to take an internship with one of my very close mentors, who at the time was like a VP at the American Cancer Society. And so she gave me an opportunity to work with her, kind of working with youth within the state of Illinois, in order to help them to like figure out how to like eat healthier and live healthier lifestyles. And so I was kind of running this like community development campaign for them. And then ultimately I ended up moving to New York for this dream job in sports. So I ended up getting a job in a sports marketing agency in New York, and moved to New York 2 years later.
Wow. What was the name of the firm and what were you working on?
It was called Octagon. And so they're a pretty well-known sports marketing agency. And I was working on a couple of the accounts that were more focused on like setting up or bringing executives to really cool sporting events. So like the Super Bowl or like the US Open, or like golf tournaments at, I don't know, like different golf courses across the country that are like really prestigious, and kind of getting executives to come to those and really like utilizing our connections within the sports industry to like make that a really special experience for those executives. And so like I got to go to the US Open and like spend the entire 2 weeks like hanging out, drinking like, I don't know, sodas in the in like a private suite with all these different executives during my time at Octagon. So yeah.
So did that lead to kind of where you are today, sort of that experience?
Yes, it did, because I hate it. Like at the end of the day, I didn't really enjoy it. I was like, I'm worried about what color the ribbons are on the boxes that we're giving away for gifts. And I feel like I'm just like not using my brain. I feel like I'm, not utilizing the things that I've been given. And so I really want to go back to business school to be able to figure out like what's happening in this entrepreneurial ecosystem and where do I fit. And so ultimately, yes, it did lead me there, but not for the reasons that you might suspect.
Yeah, got it. So I'm always curious, like how did you even get into venture capital?
I was a founder first. So I went to business school, studied different aspects of entrepreneurship, worked for a bunch of startups for free during my time as a student. And then I became an entrepreneur. So I decided there's no better time than the present to be a broke entrepreneur. when I graduated from business school. And I was like, okay, I'd been working on an idea throughout those last 2 years. And so I was like, I'm just going to give it a shot. And so I started a fintech company in the payment space. We were trying to take down Western Union by sending money transfers for underbanked individuals or unbanked individuals, particularly in Latin America. So we were utilizing crypto on the back end to create our own exchange rates. And then we would kind of bring that technology to people who typically utilize a Western Union, but offer them a better platform that's more convenient, less expensive in order for them to send remittances home to their family.
Wow. And then where did that go? Did you guys end up getting acquired or?
So I moved to Latin America. I lived in Chile and Mexico I lived in Chile for 2 years and Mexico for a year. I was a solo founder. I just kind of picked up and moved my life. And I participated in 2 accelerators. So there's Startup Chile, which was in Chile, and then Startup Bootcamp, which is a part of Fino Vista, which was in Mexico City. And I brought on 2 co-founders. We built the MVP. We were sending money throughout Chile, Peru, Mexico, and a little bit in Colombia at the time. And we brought on an angel investor in Mexico. And then at that point, we were like, we need to raise like a proper seed round. So we needed to raise like $2 million in order to really scale that company. At the time, this was like 2016, 2017. Latin American investors were not looking to invest in crypto at that time. And they weren't really looking to invest in seed stage companies either. They all want to see like all of this traction, and we just didn't have that. And so I moved back to the States in order to try to raise capital from US investors who are a bit less risk averse. And that ultimately didn't work because I think it was just the wrong time for that company, because all of our traction was in Latin America, and all of our investors were like, we don't like, you need to be like sending money from the US to Mexico, or like the US to all of these different countries. But in the US, like regulations are so high for money transfer businesses that it was kind of this chicken and egg problem of like, do we get our licenses and do we spend our own 100K on getting these licenses, or do we risk sending all of this money and potentially going to prison? And so I was like,
avoid the prison.
Yeah. I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to just kind of pivot. And I ended up taking a part-time position at TechNexus, which is a VC firm based here in Chicago. And I worked part-time. And then ultimately I was like, you know what? I'm moving back to the States full-time. I'm looking for full-time positions. I really enjoy VC. And they were like, sure, come on board full-time. And so that's how I got into VC.
Wow. That is extremely cool. So I've got to ask you, how does one start up a venture capital firm? And I want to get to after that to sort of talk about, there seems to be a common thread throughout your, at least it sounded like since college, sort of diversity and inclusion and such. And I want to talk about and get to how you decide, where to invest, how to invest, who to invest in, and so on. But I guess first, how does one start up your own venture capital firm?
Yeah, so I got a really good opportunity while I was at TechNexus. They wanted to launch an opportunity fund, which is basically a fund that invests into your current portfolio at later stage rounds. And so they were, looking to do this, and this was kind of at the start of COVID, and they were like, you know what, Tessa, just start working on this and let's see how far you get and let's see where you get. And so I was talking to lawyers, I was talking to fund admin, providers. I was working on our pitch deck and trying to figure out how do we like message everything that TechNexus is to potential LPs. And so with that experience, I kind of took a step back and I was like, hold on a second. So I have been a founder. I have now invested for the last 4 years at TechNexus, and the companies that I've invested in are doing extremely well. And now I have this blueprint of what it takes to really stand up a fund and like form a fund, because of the experience that I had kind of within, TechNexus, that I turned around and I was like, you know what, I really want to step outside of TechNexus and do this for myself, given my own experience and my own skills. and be able to invest into the founders, the types of founders that I really care about, but also the types of technologies that I really want to see in the future. And that to me are technologies that are really helping to build a better future for all of us. And so that's, I got like that kind of crash course while I was at TechNexus.
That is incredibly cool. So tell us about your investment thesis.
Yeah, so we're investing in Black and Latinx founders at a very early stage. And we're investing in two different types of companies. So we are a $10 million fund, and we're taking 70% of that fund and investing that into technology companies. So these are typical venture scale opportunities that are built, tech platforms in fintech, advertising tech, and the future of work. We define the future of work as the creator economy, the gig economy, and the passion economy, because we see the future of work being a future where people look to monetize their talents and their skills and their passions in order to create more income streams for themselves. And so that's what we're doing on the technology side. And we have a sweet spot for technologies that are helping to innovate within the small, medium, and micro size business. So looking at micro businesses such as freelancers, but also looking at small and medium businesses as well. And so that's the tech side. But then we also have 30% of our fund, which we're investing directly into CPG companies. And so these are companies that are developing products and they're selling them direct to consumer or via wholesale through kind of e-commerce or business to business relationships. And so oftentimes these companies are in food and beverage, in beauty and wellness, or in retail more broadly, like clothing and things like that. And so we're investing into, again, Black and Latinx founders at an early stage on this side as well. But we do require that these companies are doing at least 100K in revenue, because what we're doing on that side of the table is actually revenue-based financing.
Got it. And so tell us about your most recent investment and why you invested in them.
So I actually just recently got to a first close with Capitalize. And so we haven't made any investments yet, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we will be making investments. But the last company that I actually invested in was a company called Curastory. And I actually invested personally because I hadn't gotten to this first close in order to invest. And so I was like, you know what, I love this company anyways. And I'm just going to go on Republic and put some money in because I believe in it. Wow. But Curastory is in the creator economy, and the company is run by a Black woman. And she is working to connect creators with brands and help them monetize their kind of ad spots within videos on YouTube or videos on TikTok, or just kind of like, personal videos that they want to insert brand promotions into and make money off of that. And so she's creating a whole platform that makes it easy for creators to connect with those brands and get paid by those brands.
That is extremely cool. So I'm going to not pause here, but I'm going to open it up to questions. We're starting to get a flood of questions here, and I want to make sure we get to those from the crowd. But the first one here is, of course, how would a founder get their startup in front of you, Tessa?
You can absolutely go onto our website, and we have a submission form there. So whether you fall into the tech company side or CPG side, we have a different form. So just head to our website, capitalizevc.com, and you'll see a portfolio tab, and you can find the form listed right there on our website. And we do review every single form that is submitted for alignment with our investment thesis. And if we do see alignment, we will reach out and we will schedule a call.
Very cool. Second question here, how or is sustainability and social investing incorporated into your investment thesis?
Sustainability and social investing, I would say it's not an explicit part of our investment thesis, but we do love to see companies that are doing well by doing good, because, like I mentioned, I do want to see a world where it's just a better place for all of us. And so I think if a company fits into our investment focus areas that I mentioned, and on top of that is a social impact business, we would love to see that.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. This is a great question. I love this one. So what is the biggest mistake you see founders making in their early funding rounds?
In their early funding rounds.
And maybe this might be more from your experience too. Like, I could certainly share a couple of my horrible stories, but anyway, big mistakes that you think early stage founders might make as they're raising money.
I would say a couple of things. I would say listing advisors who are not actually advisors, who really, maybe you've talked to them once, but like you haven't asked them for permission to put them in your deck, because during a diligence process, most likely a VC will reach out to that person or try to contact that person if that person's like, I've never heard of this before, or I'm not really like connected to these founders at all. Like that's kind of a red flag, and that might cause you to lose that VC. And to kind of continue down that path, like not being honest about where you're at. I think I get really frustrated by founders who try to make what they're doing seem bigger and better than it is. I've been a founder. I completely understand what you're trying to do there, but it's also very important to be honest. And so like, be honest with where you are, own where you are, and just be confident in that, because the right investor will invest in you, even if you only have like 3 customers, or if you haven't reached all of the things that you want to reach. They'll understand that. They'll understand that you're at an early stage.
Is there, and it's a question coming from me, what do you see as your kind of average investment size? Like what's your bite size, I guess?
Yeah. So on the tech side, we invest in pre-seed stage companies. We like to get in the first funding round. We'll invest alongside angels. We'll invest alongside of other VCs. And we're typically investing in companies that have a valuation of less than 10 million. Mm-hmm. And we'll write checks around 200K as our first check. But typically we want like 3 to 5% ownership. So depending on your valuation, that kind of dictates our check size. And then on the CPG side, we're investing anywhere between 25K and 250K.
Got it. And it sounded like when you said 3 to 5%, does that mean it is a priced round, or are these convertible?
No. I mean, sorry, like valuation cap. 3 to 5% of the valuation cap. Yeah.
Got it. I'm just curious, how do you feel about safes?
I like them.
I'm just curious. Yeah, there are some that just will not do it. And those that, I mean, essentially, if you're setting a cap, that's sort of a valuation, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of serves as one. But I think safes and convertible notes, like especially at a pre-seed stage, if somebody's trying to raise a price round, I'm a little bit worried actually.
Right.
Like, why? So safes and convertible notes are completely fine with me. I think, the valuation cap situation, yeah, it's not a valuation, but it is, a target for your next round and a target that you're hoping to surpass. And so that's kind of how I look at it.
So, I mean, this is a great question. And this is sort of a big driver in what I do personally. But what do you see as sort of the funding landscape here in the Midwest? I mean, historically, certainly not quite as abundant, if you will, as other areas in the US, but I personally have seen it kind of emerging and growing quite a bit, but I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think for a very long time, Chicago has been kind of a second-class city as it relates to VC from as you compare it to the coast, so like California and New York. But I think that there are a lot of things happening right now that make me think that Chicago is really an emerging city for VC. And so I hate it when I talk to founders and they're like, I can't find funding here. I'm going to go to the coast. Like, I'm moving. I'm like, this is the problem. Like, we have to figure out a way to keep founders here. And I think it's happening. I think particularly for early stage funding, there's a lot of resources out there. To name a few, there's TechRise that's offering grant funding to early stage Black and Latinx founders. There's Vistar Funds, which is a donor advised fund that's investing in Black founders. There's Long Jump Fund. They're investing in early stage founders. There's M25. They're investing in, founders in the Midwest specifically at pre-seed and seed. And there are tons of funds, including capitalized VC. Now, of course, we're in the market, so I can talk about about us, and I hope that you all look towards us for funding as well. But I would agree that for a long time, it has been very hard for founders here. And I think that now that we're seeing, exits with kind of name brand companies or not exits, but like unicorn companies like Cameo coming from the city, and seeing more startups move from other places to Chicago in order to make this their headquarters. I think we're seeing a little bit more of that too. So I'm optimistic to say that I think Chicago soon will be one of the best cities to be in for.
Well, I can tell you personally, like having lived through the late 90s in the tech startup world here in Chicago, and now seeing, I don't know if the crowd knows this or not, but I believe in 2021, there were 17 unicorns out of Chicago, which is astounding to think about where we were back in my day, which was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But all right, a couple more questions here before we sort of close things down here for tonight. But this is a good one too. So how important is team when you're contemplating an investment?
Extremely. At the pre-seed stage, I think the first slides I look at when I look at a pitch deck are the solution slide, the market slide, just to check to make sure the market's big enough, not spending that much time on it. And then I'm looking at the team slide to figure out, okay, what's the solution and who is the team that's trying to work on this, and what do they have in their experience that leads me to believe that they will be successful at this, or that they'll bring a new view, a new perspective to this. And so put anything on your team slide that speaks to that, because if I don't see that in the pitch, I'm probably not going to reach out to you for a conversation, just because I'm like, who are these people? And why do they think they can do this? So very important.
Going back to the Midwest and Chicagoland in general, is region or location part of your thesis?
On the tech side, I'm investing in across the country, but I do enjoy investing in Chicago and the Midwest. And then on the CPG side, I'm investing only in the Midwest. So we're looking at, Chicago, Detroit, Columbus, Indianapolis, St. Louis, Minneapolis, Wisconsin, Madison, Milwaukee, all of those.
So we literally have 30 seconds or a minute left here. And I just wanted to ask you if you have any sort of parting words of advice for all of the founders and entrepreneurs that we have here tonight from your experience and moving forward.
Parting words of advice. I would say try, if you want to pursue VC, and you don't have to pursue VC. There are definitely other options for funding that are sometimes much more appropriate. I would say, but if you want to pursue VC, I would say try to educate yourself on the industry before you get in front of a venture investor. Because the last thing a venture investor wants to do is coach you on what's going on in the industry. So I would say, kind of listen to podcasts. That's the way that I was able to really learn the space. On my way to work, I would listen to an episode of a podcast and I would write down all the words I didn't know, what they meant. And I would then go look up those words getting back to the diligence that we were talking about in the beginning, like just these little things I think help you to set yourself apart and really show up to a meeting like prepared and ready to have this conversation, knowing what valuation is and what's a typical valuation for your round, and not kind of going outside of that. So
that is awesome advice. I really appreciate that. So I'm going to ask everybody here one more time to unmute themselves. And we're going to make Tessa once again very uncomfortable. So everyone, please, please, please unmute yourself very quickly. Let's give a great big round of applause and cheer to Tessa.
Yay, Tessa! Yay, Tessa!
Thank you, Tessa.
Really
thank
a
you so
pleasure
much.
learning more about you and where you are today, and certainly where you're headed. And congratulations,
Thank
by
you.
the way, on your fund. That's really, really extraordinary. And I do believe, as you do, that Chicago is emerging as a proverbial flyover country into a real destination and a real hub for tech startups and CPG startups and VCs and otherwise. So thanks again for joining us here tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yep, absolutely. Mads, Aaron, Raj, any parting words?
Thank you. This was awesome. Just great. Really great. Great advice. Great story. Great opportunities for people who are in this room or know other people in this room. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your evening.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful night.
Cheers.